The crystal glasses clinked as my trembling hands arranged them on the silver tray. I'd been working double shifts at Vermilion for 3 weeks straight, my feet aching in the mandatory 4-inch heels that Mr. Petrova insisted enhanced the dining experience. Tonight, the restaurant hummed with the quiet murmurs of Seattle's elite, politicians pretending not to recognize tech moguls, old money pretending not to notice new. Table 7's been waiting 15 minutes for their drinks, Alina. Marco hissed as he passed, deliberately bumping my shoulder and nearly toppling my carefully balanced arrangement. I steadied the tray with a practiced motion. I'm going right now. The truth was I'd been avoiding Table 7 since they arrived. 5 men in suits worth more than my yearly salary, their voices a mixture of English and something else. Something that reminded me of childhood lullabies and my grandmother's cooking. Something that made my chest ache with memories I'd spent years trying to forget. Russian. They were speaking Russian. I navigated between tables, the weight of the tray digging into my palm. The restaurant's dim lighting created pools of shadow, designed to give diners the illusion of privacy. As I approached, I noticed the man at the head of the table sat with his back to the wall, facing the entrance. Unlike the others who gestured wildly as they spoke, he remained still, one hand resting on the table, the other hidden from view. His stillness was more intimidating than any movement could have been. "Your drinks, gentlemen," I announced, my voice adopting the practiced pleasant tone that earned tips. I placed each glass down carefully, avoiding eye contact. That was another of Mr. Petrova's rules. Never look the patrons directly in the eye unless they speak to you first. It keeps the experience exclusive, he'd explained during my training. The men barely acknowledged me, continuing their conversation as if I were invisible, all except for him. I could feel his gaze tracking my movements. The weight of his attention made my skin prickle. I saved his drink for last, neat whiskey in a crystal tumbler. As I leaned forward to place it before him, the scent hit me first. Expensive cologne with notes of sandalwood, and something darker underneath, something dangerous. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and accented. Not heavily, but enough to confirm what I already knew. I made the mistake of looking up. Dark eyes caught mine, and for a moment, I couldn't look away. His face was all sharp angles. High cheekbones, strong jaw darkened with precisely maintained stubble, and a mouth that seemed perpetually on the edge of a smirk. A thin scar ran through his right eyebrow, the only imperfection in an otherwise flawless face. He wasn't just handsome, he was beautiful in the way predators are beautiful, a reminder that nature's most deadly creations are often its most magnificent. "Will there be anything else?" I asked, dropping my gaze to the polished tabletop. "Not at the moment." I nodded and stepped back, relief flooding through me as I turned away. That's when I heard it, one of the men leaning over to whisper something that made the others laugh. I caught fragments. The help these days, and wouldn't mind seeing what's under that uniform. My cheeks burned. It wasn't the first crude comment I'd overheard, and it certainly wouldn't be the last in this line of work. But something about hearing it in Russian, the language that once meant safety and home to me, made it cut deeper. "Idi ka chertu, mudak," I muttered under my breath. "Go to hell, asshole." I'd taken 3 steps when a hand closed around my wrist, not roughly, but with enough force to stop me in my tracks. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs as the man from the head of the table stepped into my space, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Say that again," he said softly, his accent thickening. The restaurant seemed to fade around us. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His grip wasn't painful, but the implications of his strength were clear in the controlled pressure of his fingers. I don't know what you mean," I stammered. His eyes never left mine, dark and unreadable. "You know exactly what I mean, Malishka." "Little one." The endearment sounded like a threat. One of the men at the table called out something in rapid Russian. Without looking away from me, he responded with a single sharp word that silenced the table immediately. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alina," I whispered. "Alina," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "You're Russian." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Half, on my mother's side." A flicker of interest crossed his face. Where in Russia? St. Petersburg. But I was born here. I haven't been back since I was a child. I was babbling, words spilling out under the weight of his scrutiny. Yet you curse like a native. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. I swallowed hard. I should get back to work. Mr. Petrova doesn't like us to linger. Mr. Petrova works for me, he said simply. The blood drained from my face. Nikolai Petrova owned Vermilion. At least, that's what everyone believed. But the way this man spoke, I don't understand, I said, though I was beginning to. He released my wrist, but I remained rooted to the spot as he reached into his jacket. I flinched instinctively, a reaction that made his eyes narrow. But he only withdrew a business card, holding it between two fingers. Mikhail Volkov, he said, offering the card. I stared at it without taking it. The name was embossed in simple black letters, with only a phone number beneath it. No title, no company name. Take it, he said, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. My fingers trembled as I accepted the card. What am I supposed to do with this? Call me when your shift ends. He turned back toward his table, then paused. And Alina? Don't make me come looking for you. I stood there, clutching his card, as he returned to his associates. They regarded me with new interest, their expressions ranging from amusement to suspicion. I tucked the card into my pocket and hurried back to the kitchen, my mind racing. Marco intercepted me at the swinging doors. What the hell was that about? Nothing, I said automatically. Nothing? That was Mikhail fucking Volkov you were talking to. I stared at him. You know him? Marco looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Everyone knows him. Well, everyone who matters. He owns half the waterfront and probably half the people who regulate it. I thought Mr. Petrova owned this restaurant, Marco snorted. Petrova's just a name on paperwork. Volkov owns everything that matters in this part of town. He leaned closer. They say he's connected, like old country connected, if you know what I mean. I did. The Russian Mafia wasn't just something from movies. My grandmother had told me enough stories about the Vori visa cone to recognize the signs, the stillness, the way the others deferred to him, the carefully maintained distance between himself and the entrance. What did he want with you? Marco pressed. I touched the pocket where the card lay heavy as a stone. I don't know. Well, whatever it is, don't keep him waiting. Last waitress who spilled a drink on one of his guys disappeared the next day. Just saying. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I moved between tables mechanically, taking orders, delivering food, all while acutely aware of Mikhail Volkov's presence. He didn't look my way again, but I felt his attention like a physical touch. By midnight, his table had emptied, the men departing in pairs with subtle nods to their leader. Volkov was the last to leave, dropping a thick fold of cash on the table without asking for the bill. As he passed my station, his eyes met mine briefly, a reminder. I finished my side work in record time, changed out of my uniform in the cramped employee bathroom, and slipped out the back door into the alley behind the restaurant. The night air was damp with the promise of rain, the Seattle sky a blanket of low-hanging clouds reflecting the city's lights. I had no intention of calling him. Whatever he wanted from me couldn't be good. I would go home, block this night from my memory, and pray that he forgot about the waitress who'd cursed in Russian. I made it 3 steps before the black SUV at the end of the alley flashed its lights once. My breath caught as the rear door opened. I couldn't make out the figure inside, but I knew who it was. I should run. I should scream. I should do anything but what I did next. I walked toward the car. The closer I got, the more my instincts screamed for me to turn around. But something stronger than fear pulled me forward. Curiosity, maybe, or the fatalistic sense that running would only delay the inevitable. Mikhail Volkov sat alone in the back seat, his posture relaxed yet somehow alert. Up close, in the confined space of the vehicle, he seemed larger, his presence filling the air like smoke. "You didn't call," he said. "You were waiting anyway." I stood by the open door, unwilling to enter his domain. "Get in, Alina. It's going to rain." As if on cue, the first heavy drops splattered against the pavement. I hesitated for another moment before sliding into the seat beside him. The door closed with a soft, expensive-sounding thud, sealing us together in leather-scented darkness. The driver, A broad-shouldered man whose eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror before focusing on the road, pulled away from the curb without being instructed. "Where are we going?" I asked, pressing myself against the door, maximizing the space between us. "Nowhere yet. We're just talking." Mikhail studied me with that same unnerving intensity. "How long have you worked at Vermilion?" 6 months. "Before that?" I frowned. "Why does it matter?" "Humor me." I shifted uncomfortably. "Different restaurants. I've been in the service industry since I was 18. "And how old are you now?" 26. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "Your Russian is very good for someone who left as a child. My grandmother raised me after my mother died. She refused to speak English at home." I surprised myself by volunteering this information. "And your father?" My jaw tightened. "Not in the picture." Mikhail watched my face, reading something in my expression that made him change the subject. "Tell me, Alina, are you happy at Vermilion?" The question caught me off guard. "It's a job." That's not what I asked. I considered lying, but something told me he would know. "No, I'm not happy there. But the tips are good, and the health insurance covers my grandmother's medications. And if I offered you another position? One with better pay, better hours, and comprehensive benefits?" My eyes narrowed. "What kind of position?" The hint of a smile touched his lips. "Not the kind you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking. I can guess." He leaned forward slightly. "I need an assistant. Someone who speaks Russian and English fluently. Someone observant, discreet, and not easily intimidated. And you think that's me? The waitress who cursed at your associates?" "Precisely because of that." His eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Most people are afraid even to look at me. You called one of my men an asshole in his native tongue." "It was stupid," I admitted. "It was honest. I value honesty, Alina. It's rare in my world." I laughed bitterly. "Right. The honest mobster." The temperature in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees. The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then quickly away. "Careful," Mikhail said softly. Fear trickled down my spine like ice water. "I should go home. My grandmother will worry. Your grandmother is asleep, as she has been since 9 o'clock when she took her evening medication." At my startled look, he continued. "Irina Petrova, 78 years old, lives with you in a 2-bedroom apartment on East Lake Avenue. She has a heart condition and arthritis. She feeds the pigeons in the park every morning at 7, weather permitting." The casual recitation of these intimate details left me cold. "You've been watching me. I've been considering you for several weeks now. Why?" "Because I need someone I can trust." He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, offering it to me. "Your first month's salary in advance, along with detailed information about the position. Think about it overnight. I'll send a car for your answer tomorrow at noon." I didn't take the envelope, and if my answer is no, his expression remained unchanged, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been disappointment. "Then the car will leave without you, and you'll never see me again. You'll continue your life as it was, working for tips and struggling to pay for your grandmother's medications." "Just like that?" I asked skeptically. "Just like that." He set the envelope on the seat between us. "I don't force people to work for me, Alina. That would make them liabilities rather than assets." I stared at the envelope, torn between suspicion and temptation. "I don't know anything about being an assistant." "You'll learn." The finality in his voice suggested he already knew what my answer would be. The car slowed to a stop, and I realized with surprise that we were outside my apartment building. I hadn't given the driver my address. "How did you—" I began, then stopped. Of course he knew where I lived. "Until tomorrow, Alina." Mikhail reached across me to open my door, his arm brushing mine. Even that brief contact sent a jolt through my system. I grabbed the envelope and stepped out into the rain, which had intensified to a steady downpour. Before I could close the door, Mikhail spoke again. "One more thing." I turned back, rain soaking through my thin jacket. "Next time you curse in Russian," he said, "make sure you're not in a room full of Russians." For the first time that night, I saw him smile fully, a flash of white teeth that transformed his severe features into something almost boyishly charming. Then the door closed, and the SUV pulled away, leaving me alone in the rain with an envelope full of money and the distinct feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the envelope's contents spread before me. A stack of crisp $100 bills totaling $5,000, and a single-page document outlining my potential duties as personal assistant to Mr. Volkov. The description was surprisingly mundane: managing schedules, coordinating with staff, arranging travel, translating when necessary. Nothing overtly illegal. Nothing that explained why he'd offer so much money for tasks any college graduate could perform. The rain tapped against my window, a gentle percussion accompanying the thoughts racing through my mind. From the bedroom next to mine came the soft, rhythmic breathing of my grandmother. I'd checked on her when I got home, finding her asleep with her television still on. A Russian soap opera playing to an unconscious audience. She'd sacrificed everything to raise me after my mother died, left behind friends, a respected position as a university librarian in St. Petersburg, the comfort of her native culture, all to give her orphaned granddaughter a chance at the American dream. And what had I given her in return? A cramped apartment with unreliable heating, generic medications that weren't quite as effective as the name brands we couldn't afford, and the indignity of counting pennies at the grocery store. $5,000 would cover her prescriptions for months. At dawn, I gave up on sleep and made coffee. I was pouring my second cup when my grandmother shuffled into the kitchen, her slippered feet making soft swishing sounds against the linoleum. "You're up early," she said in Russian, her accent much thicker than mine. She narrowed her eyes, studying my face. "Or perhaps you never went to sleep." I kissed her papery cheek, just excited about a new opportunity. What opportunity? She lowered herself carefully into a chair, her arthritic hands curling around the mug I placed before her. I hesitated. My grandmother might have left Russia decades ago, but she knew how things worked there. She'd recognized Mikhail Volkov for what he was faster than I had. "A better job," I said finally. "More money, better hours. With whom?" I busied myself with the coffee pot. "A businessman. Russian, actually. He needs an assistant who's bilingual." The silence stretched until I was forced to turn and meet her gaze. Her eyes, the same hazel as mine, though clouded now with cataracts, narrowed suspiciously. "What's his name, this businessman?" I considered lying, but she'd always been able to see through me. "Mikhail Volkov." She set her coffee down with a sharp click. "Volkov," she repeated, her expression unreadable. "Does he know who you are?" The question confused me. Just what I told him, that I'm half Russian through you and my mother. "And your father? Did you mention him?" "No, why would I? I don't even know who he is." It was a point of contention between us. Her refusal to discuss my father beyond saying he had been a mistake my mother made. She pressed her lips into a thin line. "You cannot take this job, babushka." "No." She cut me off with a sharp gesture. The Volkovs are not businessmen. They are wolves, just as their name says. He owns restaurants, real estate. He owns these things the way a spider owns its web. She leaned forward, capturing my hands in her gnarled ones. "Listen to me, Alina. There are things you don't understand, things I've protected you from. The world Mikhail Volkov inhabits is not one you want to enter." I gently extracted my hands. "I already live in that world. I'm just on the bottom rung of it, serving drinks and dodging wandering hands for tips." "Better the devil you know," she muttered. "The devil I know can't pay for your heart medication." I hadn't meant to say it so bluntly, but once the words escaped, I couldn't take them back. Her face softened. "Oh, my girl, is that what this is about? I'm an old woman. I've lived my life, and I want you to keep living it." I knelt beside her chair, resting my head against her knee like I used to as a child. "This is just a job. I'll be careful, I promise." She stroked my hair, her touch feather-light. Some promises are impossible to keep. After a long silence, she sighed. "If you are determined, then you must promise me one thing, anything. Never tell him your father's name, even if you learn it someday." I looked up at her, confused. Why would he care about my father? Instead of answering, she rose stiffly from her chair. I need to dress. The pigeons will be waiting for their breakfast. At precisely noon, a black sedan with tinted windows pulled up outside our building. Not the SUV from the night before, but similar in its quiet ostentation. I was waiting on the front steps, having already decided my answer. The same driver from last night emerged and opened the rear door without a word. I expected to see Mikhail inside, but the back seat was empty. Mr. Volkov awaits at the residence, the driver explained, his accent thicker than his employer's. If you are coming. I hesitated for only a moment, before sliding into the car's leather interior. As we pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse of my grandmother watching from our apartment window, her face a pale oval of worry. We drove north, leaving the city behind for the winding roads that hugged the coastline. The houses grew larger and further apart, hidden behind security gates and dense foliage. Finally, we turned onto a private drive that curved through manicured grounds before revealing a modern mansion of glass and stone perched on a cliff overlooking the Sound. The driver used a key card to open an imposing gate, then guided the car up the drive to the main entrance. Before we'd even come to a complete stop, the front door opened, and a middle-aged woman in a tailored gray suit stepped out. Ms. Petrova. She greeted me as the driver opened my door. Her accent was American, her smile professional without being warm. I'm Helen Morrison, Mr. Volkov's house manager. He's asked me to give you a tour and go over some preliminary details before your meeting. I followed her into an entrance hall with soaring ceilings and walls of glass that showcased the dramatic seascape beyond. The interior was minimally furnished with pieces that looked both expensive and uncomfortable. Nothing seemed lived in or personal, more like a high-end hotel than a home. Mr. Volkov divides his time between several properties, Helen explained, as she led me through the main floor. This is his primary residence in Washington, though he travels frequently. Should you accept the position, you'll be expected to accompany him on these trips. Travel wasn't mentioned in the outline, I said. Helen arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow. The document you received was preliminary. The full contract is more comprehensive. She showed me through a series of spaces that blurred together in their pristine, impersonal luxury. A dining room that could seat 20, a kitchen where no food appeared to have been prepared, various sitting areas arranged for conversations that seemed unlikely to occur. And this would be your office, Helen said, opening a door to reveal a sun-filled room with views of the water. Unlike the rest of the house, this space felt designed for actual work, with a large desk, ergonomic chair, and shelves lined with reference books and folders. It's beautiful, I admitted. Yes, Mr. Volkov believes in providing optimal conditions for his staff. She gestured to a door at the far end of the room. Through there is a small apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette, for nights when work runs late or weather makes travel difficult. The implication was clear. This job would consume more than standard business hours. What happened to his previous assistant? I asked. Helen's expression remained neutral. He was promoted to oversee Mr. Volkov's interests in Chicago. Before I could ask more questions, a discreet chime sounded. Helen checked her watch. Mr. Volkov is ready to see you. This way, please. She led me to a different wing of the house, stopping before a set of double doors. After a soft knock, she opened them and gestured me inside, closing the door behind me without entering herself. The room was a study, its walls lined with bookshelves interspersed with what appeared to be original artwork. A massive desk occupied one end, positioned so that anyone seated behind it would have their back to a wall while facing both the door and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Sound. Mikhail Volkov stood by those windows, his back to me, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out at the water. He wore charcoal trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing corded forearms dusted with dark hair. The casual attire did nothing to diminish the aura of authority that surrounded him. The view never fails to clear my mind, he said without turning. Water has memory. It's seen everything, been everywhere. Makes our problems seem small by comparison. I remained near the door, uncertain whether to approach. Is that why you live here? For perspective? He turned then, his mouth curving slightly. I live here because it's defensible. One road in, steep cliffs on 3 sides, water access if necessary. He gestured toward a chair positioned before his desk. Sit, please. I moved forward and took the offered seat, noticing as I did that he wore a shoulder holster with what was unmistakably a handgun. He saw me looking and made no attempt to hide it. "Does my carrying a weapon bother you?" he asked as he took his own seat behind the desk. "Should it?" Most people would find it concerning. Most people haven't had a drunk customer pull a knife because they were cut off at the bar. I met his gaze steadily. "I grew up in the real world, Mr. Volkov. People have weapons." He studied me for a moment longer before nodding, apparently satisfied. "You've decided to accept my offer." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." "Good." He opened a drawer and removed a thick folder, sliding it across the desk to me. "Your contract. Take time to review it. If you have questions or concerns, now is the time to raise them." I flipped through the document: salary and benefits, confidentiality clauses, detailed job responsibilities. Everything seemed straightforward, almost mundane, until I reached a section titled Security Protocols. "Employee will be fitted with a tracking device to be worn at all times." I read aloud, my eyebrows rising. "Employee will submit to regular security screenings and background checks. Employee will have no contact with law enforcement without prior approval." Is this standard for an assistant position? It's standard for anyone in my inner circle. His expression remained impassive. "My business interests make me a target for various parties. These measures protect both you and me." "And what exactly are these business interests? The contract is vague." "Deliberately so." He leaned back in his chair. "I have holdings in real estate, hospitality, shipping, private security, and several technology ventures. The specifics are compartmentalized for reasons that should be obvious, because some of those ventures aren't entirely legal," I said bluntly. He didn't flinch. "Because information is valuable, and valuable things must be protected." I continued reading, stopping again at a clause regarding housing. "This says I'd be expected to relocate to the apartment on your property. For security reasons, yes, you'd have weekends free unless we're traveling, and scheduled evenings to visit your grandmother." He folded his hands on the desk. "I understand your concern for her care. The contract includes a provision for her as well: a monthly stipend, premium health insurance, and the option to relocate to a residential property I own near the hospital district. 1-bedroom units with 24-hour security and an on-site nurse." My throat tightened. It was more than I dared hope for. Financial security for my grandmother, a chance to give her the comfort she deserved in her final years, but the price was steep: my independence, my privacy, my freedom. "Why me?" I asked finally. "There must be hundreds of bilingual assistants in Seattle with more experience, better qualifications." Mikhail's dark eyes held mine. "Experience can be gained, skills can be taught, but certain qualities cannot: perception, adaptability, loyalty." He paused. "That night at the restaurant wasn't our first encounter, Alina." My blood chilled. "What do you mean?" 6 months ago. The Harbor Club. You were working the coat check during a private event. I remembered it vaguely. A charity auction for some maritime conservation effort. I'd picked up the shift as a favor to a friend. 2 men were arguing near your station," he continued. "One of them dropped something into the pocket of a coat he didn't own. You saw it happen." The memory crystallized. "A flash drive," I said slowly. "He put it in someone else's jacket. I switched the coats around when I thought no one was looking." Mikhail nodded. "The jacket belonged to me. The flash drive contained information that would have been extremely problematic in the wrong hands. You had no idea whose coat it was. No reason to intervene. Yet you did." "I didn't like his face," I said simply. "He looked cruel." "You have good instincts." Mikhail's expression softened fractionally. "I made inquiries about you after that night. When I learned you were half Russian, that your grandmother was from St. Petersburg, it seemed like fate. The word hung between us, laden with meanings I couldn't quite grasp. There was something he wasn't telling me, some piece of the puzzle still missing. "If I sign this," I said, tapping the contract, "what happens next?" "You'll begin immediately. There's much to learn." He reached across the desk, offering me a pen. "The question is, Alina Petrova, are you ready to step into a new world?" I thought of my grandmother's warning, of the gun holstered beneath Mikhail's arm, of the mysterious flash drive and the men who wanted it. I thought of dead-end jobs and mounting medical bills, of dreams deferred and opportunities never offered. My fingers closed around the pen. I'm ready. 3 weeks into my new position, I still couldn't decide if I'd made a terrible mistake or the best decision of my life. The learning curve was brutal. Mikhail expected perfection, and his definition of perfection included mind reading. Anticipate my needs before I know them myself, he'd instructed during my first day. Easy for him to say. My days began at 5 a.m., reviewing security reports and international news feeds for anything that might impact his businesses. By 6, I was preparing briefing notes for his morning meetings. 7 o'clock brought a car to take us to his downtown office, a penthouse suite in a building he owned, with views of the harbor and mountains beyond. Another coffee, Mikhail said without looking up from his computer. We'd been reviewing shipping manifests for 3 hours straight, and my eyes burned from staring at columns of numbers. I rose from my desk in the corner of his office, grateful for the chance to stretch my legs. The Ethiopian blend or the Colombian? A flicker of approval crossed his face. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have known to ask. Ethiopian, strong. In the small kitchenette adjacent to his office, I prepared his coffee exactly as he preferred. No sugar, just a splash of whole milk, served in a specific mug, black ceramic with no handle. These small details mattered to him in ways I was still discovering. When I returned, he'd moved to stand by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. His conversation was in Russian, his tone clipped and cold. I set the coffee on the side table and started to withdraw, but he gestured for me to stay. Da, я понимаю, he said into the phone. Yes, I understand. No, это неприемлемо. No, that's not acceptable. He switched to English. Tell Orlov if the shipment isn't cleared by morning, I'll consider our arrangement terminated. Permanently. The threat was delivered with such casual indifference that it took me a moment to register its weight. Terminated. Permanently. The words hung in the air after he ended the call. Mikhail sipped his coffee, his gaze fixed on the harbor below. You understand what's happening there, don't you? I hesitated. One of your shipments is being held up. By whom? Customs, I'd assume, or someone who can influence customs. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. And what do you think is in these containers that someone might want to delay? It felt like a test. Everything with Mikhail was a test. Something valuable, or something illegal, or both. He set down his cup. You've been with me for nearly a month now. You've seen how I operate, who I meet with, the precautions I take. What conclusion have you drawn about my business, Alina? My mouth went dry. You're careful about what you put in writing. You meet with politicians and police officials as often as other businessmen. Your security protocols are extreme. I met his gaze. Some of what you do isn't strictly legal. A diplomatic assessment. His lips curved slightly. Do you want to know what's in those containers? Did I? Knowledge was protection, but it was also liability. Still, I nodded. Art. Specifically, 3 Fabergé eggs and a collection of imperial jewelry that disappeared from the Hermitage during the chaos after the Soviet collapse. He spoke casually, as if discussing the weather rather than priceless stolen treasures. The Russian government believes they were destroyed. Several private collectors believe they own them. In reality, they've been in a secure vault in Dubai for the past 15 years. I stared at him, processing this information. You're smuggling stolen art into the country? I'm returning stolen art to its rightful owners. He moved back to his desk. The Orlov family has been trying to recover these pieces since they were seized during the revolution. Their ancestor commissioned 2 of the eggs directly from Fabergé himself. But if they were in a museum, they were displayed as property of the state, yes. A state that no longer exists, which seized them from the family who paid for their creation. His tone hardened. History is written by victors, Alina. That doesn't make it right. Before I could respond, his phone chimed with a calendar alert. The mayor's office, I said automatically. Lunch at Canlis. He nodded. Have the car brought around. And call Helen. Tell her we'll need the blue suite prepared for guests tonight. As I made the necessary arrangements, I couldn't stop thinking about those Fabergé eggs, smuggled across international borders through Mikhail's network. If he was caught, it would mean prison. And I was now complicit. The restaurant was one of Seattle's finest, perched on a hillside with panoramic views of Lake Union. I'd only ever seen it from the outside, the kind of place where a month of my old salary might cover appetizers for two. The maitre d' recognized Mikhail immediately, escorting us to a private dining room where the mayor and his chief of staff were already waiting. I hung back as introductions were made, taking my usual position near the door, close enough to be summoned if needed, far enough to give the impression of privacy. Mikhail. The mayor pumped his hand enthusiastically. Good to see you. Have you met my new chief of staff, Jason Blackwood? The men exchanged pleasantries, but I noticed the slight tension in Mikhail's shoulders, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. Something about this Blackwood person bothered him. Miss Petrova, isn't it? I startled as Blackwood addressed me directly. He was younger than the mayor, maybe mid-40s, with the polished good looks of someone who spent significant time maintaining his appearance. My assistant, Mikhail confirmed, a note of warning in his voice. We've met before, I believe. Blackwood's smile was practiced. The Harbor Club? About 6 months ago? Ice slid down my spine. The coat check. The flash drive. This was the man who had slipped something into Mikhail's jacket, the man with the cruel face. I don't recall. I lied smoothly. His eyes narrowed slightly. I never forget a pretty face, especially one that speaks Russian. Mikhail placed a hand at the small of my back, the touch proprietary. Alina, would you give us the room? I'll message if we need anything. I nodded, relieved to escape Blackwood's scrutiny. As I left, I heard the mayor ask, Didn't know you had a new assistant, Mikhail. What happened to Daniel? The door closed before I could hear Mikhail's response. I waited in the restaurant's bar, nursing a sparkling water and watching sailboats glide across the lake. My phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother, a photo of her new apartment, which she'd moved into the week before. The space was bright and modern, twice the size of our old place, with accessible features that made her daily life easier. I made pierogi with the neighbors. Her message read, The American woman tried to add cheese. I smiled, typing back, The horror. Did you set her straight? Of course. She is learning. How is your work? I hesitated. I'd told her as little as possible about my daily activities, focusing instead on the benefits, the salary, her new home, the premium health insurance that covered medications our old plan wouldn't touch. Busy, I replied finally. Learning a lot. Be careful, Solnishko. Remember what I said. Never tell him your father's name. Even now, her cryptic warning haunted me. What could my unknown father possibly have to do with Mikhail Volkov? The lunch meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. When the men emerged from the private room, the mayor departed immediately, but Blackwood lingered, his gaze following me as I moved to Mikhail's side. A pleasure seeing you again, Miss Petrova, he said, extending his hand. I had no choice but to take it. His grip was too firm, his thumb brushing deliberately across my wrist. Likewise, Mr. Blackwood. Jason, please. He turned to Mikhail. You always did have an eye for exceptional talent, Volkov. I look forward to our next meeting. Once we were in the car, Mikhail's carefully maintained composure cracked. What did he say to you? Nothing important. Just small talk. Don't lie to me, Alina. His voice was soft but edged with steel. Not about Blackwood. Never about him. I swallowed hard. He implied we'd met before, at the Harbor Club. Mikhail cursed in Russian, low and vicious. He recognized you. Is that bad? It's complicated. He rubbed his temple, a rare display of tension. Blackwood works for people who would very much like to see me destroyed. Until recently, he was stationed in D.C., working as a congressional liaison for a certain 3-letter agency. CIA, I guessed. Clever girl. His smile was grim. His sudden appearance in Seattle's political scene is no coincidence, nor is his interest in you. What does he want? Information, access, a way to prove I'm the monster they believe me to be. And are you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Mikhail studied me for a long moment. By their definition, yes. I operate outside their laws when necessary. I use methods they consider extreme. I protect what's mine. His gaze intensified. And you, Alina Petrova, are now mine to protect. The possessive statement should have frightened me. Instead, it sent an inappropriate thrill through my body. I looked away, hoping he hadn't noticed my reaction. The flash drive, I said, changing the subject. What was on it? Evidence. Names, offshore accounts linking several federal judges to Russian oligarchs. He shrugged. Nothing that concerned me directly, but the kind of information that creates chaos when released. Blackwood was using my jacket to frame me as the source. Why would he do that? To compromise my relationship with certain government officials who find me useful. Mikhail's phone chimed with a message, which he checked before continuing. We're going to have guests tonight. I need you to make yourself presentable. The abrupt change of subject gave me whiplash. Guests? Who? Orlov and his daughter. They're flying in from New York to discuss their artwork. He eyed my simple black skirt and white blouse critically. Wear the blue dress, the one Helen purchased last week. My cheeks heated. That dress is perfect for tonight's purpose. His tone left no room for argument. You'll join us for dinner. Irina Orlov is close to your age. It will give her someone to talk to while her father and I handle business. I bit back a retort about being used as a glorified babysitter. Yes, sir. His eyes darkened at the formal address. Don't call me that unless you want me to act like your superior rather than your employer. The implication sent another inappropriate shiver down my spine. What was happening to me? 3 weeks in Mikhail Volkov's orbit, and I was responding to his domineering attitude like some heroine in a gothic romance. I'll be ready by 7, I said instead, keeping my voice neutral. Back at the house, I retreated to my apartment to prepare for the evening. The blue dress hung in my closet, still in its garment bag from the exclusive boutique where Helen had taken me shopping. I'd protested when I saw the price tag, more than I used to make in 2 months, but she'd overruled me. Mr. Volkov expects his staff to project a certain image, she'd explained. Consider it part of your uniform. I unzipped the bag now, running my fingers over the midnight blue silk. The dress was undeniably beautiful, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that would move like water when I walked. It was also dangerously low-cut, with a slit up one side that would reveal more leg than I was comfortable showing. As I slipped it on, I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. Elegant, sophisticated, with a hint of something wild in her eyes. This wasn't me. Or perhaps it was a version of me I'd never had the chance to become. I secured my grandmother's silver cross around my neck, the only piece of jewelry I owned worth wearing. It rested just above the neckline of the dress, drawing attention to the hollow of my throat. At precisely 7 o'clock, I emerged from my apartment to find Mikhail waiting in the hallway. He wore a tuxedo that looked as though it had been poured onto his frame, emphasizing his broad shoulders and narrow waist. His dark hair was swept back from his forehead, highlighting the sharp angles of his face. His eyes traveled over me slowly, lingering on the places where the silk clung to my curves. Perfect, he murmured, offering his arm. Shall we? As we descended the stairs together, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking deeper into his web with every step I took. And worse still, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to escape. The Orlovs arrived precisely at 7:30, escorted by 2 men whose bulky suits did little to disguise the weapons they carried. Sergei Orlov was in his 60s, with steel gray hair and the weathered complexion of someone who'd spent decades navigating difficult circumstances. His daughter, Irina, was perhaps a year or 2 younger than me, with the kind of beauty that comes from perfect genetics and expensive maintenance, flawless skin, honey blonde hair styled in loose waves, and a bearing that spoke of Swiss finishing schools and ballet lessons. Mikhail. Sergei embraced him with genuine warmth. Too long, my friend. Too long. The world grows smaller every day, yet somehow the distance between old friends increases, Mikhail replied, returning the embrace before turning to Irina. You look more like your mother every time I see you. She offered her cheek for a kiss. You say that every time, Misha. The familiar diminutive caught me by surprise. One day I'll be wrinkled and gray, and you'll still be comparing me to her wedding portrait. Mikhail laughed, a genuine sound I'd rarely heard from him. Because it will still be true. He gestured toward me. May I introduce my assistant, Alina Petrova. Both Orlovs registered interest at my surname. Petrova? Sergei repeated. From where in Russia? My grandmother is from St. Petersburg, I explained. I was born here, though. St. Petersburg? He echoed, studying my face with new intensity. The old city holds many secrets, yes? Many ghosts. Before I could respond, Mikhail smoothly redirected the conversation. Shall we move to the dining room? Helen has prepared something special. Dinner was a lavish affair, course after course of exquisite food paired with wines from Mikhail's cellar. The conversation flowed easily between Russian and English, with frequent references to people and places I didn't recognize. I remained mostly silent, observing the dynamics between the three of them. There was history here, deeper than business associates, more complex than friendship. So, Alina, Irina said during a lull, how did you come to work for Mikhail? He's notoriously selective about his inner circle. I felt Mikhail's gaze on me, monitoring my response. We met at a restaurant where I was working. He was impressed with my Russian. Just like that? She smiled, but her eyes remained calculating. How fortunate for you. I believe in recognizing talent when I see it, Mikhail interjected, his hand coming to rest briefly on mine. Alina has proven herself invaluable. The proprietary gesture wasn't lost on either of our guests. Sergei's eyebrows rose slightly, while Irina's expression cooled. I'm sure she has, Irina murmured, taking a deliberate sip of wine. After dinner, Mikhail led Sergei to his study, leaving me to entertain Irina in the glass-walled sitting room overlooking the Sound. Night had fallen, transforming the windows into dark mirrors that reflected our silhouettes against the backdrop of strategically placed lighting. It's a beautiful home, I offered, when the silence between us grew uncomfortable. Irina trailed her fingers along the back of a white leather sofa, one of many. Mikhail collects properties like some men collect watches or cars. Though he has those too, of course. She turned to face me directly. How long have you been sleeping with him? The blunt question caught me off guard. We're not. No? She looked genuinely surprised. The way he touches you, watches you? I assumed. She shrugged elegantly. It's only a matter of time then. Mikhail always takes what he wants. Our relationship is professional, I insisted, though the words felt hollow even to me. There had been moments, a lingering touch, a heated glance, the electricity that sometimes charged the air between us, but nothing had happened. Nothing could happen, if I wanted to maintain any semblance of control over my life. Irina laughed softly. Oh, sweet girl. There's no such thing as professional in Mikhail's world. There's only useful or useless, loyal or disloyal. She moved closer, her perfume, something French and intimidatingly expensive, enveloping me. My father and Mikhail have been associates for 3 decades. I've known him since I was a child. He was my first crush, my adolescent fantasy. The admission stirred something uncomfortable in my chest. I don't see how that's relevant to me, because I understand the pull he has. Her voice dropped confidentially. The power, the danger, the absolute certainty he projects. It's intoxicating. She studied my face. You feel it too. I can see it in your eyes. I stepped back, creating distance between us. You're mistaken. I don't think I am. She smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. Just be careful. Mikhail doesn't love, he possesses. And he discards what no longer serves his purpose. Before I could respond, the door opened, and both men returned. I immediately noticed the shift in atmosphere. Sergei looked satisfied, while Mikhail's expression was carefully neutral, the mask he wore during complex negotiations. It's settled then, Sergei announced. The exchange will happen tomorrow night. Your men will handle the customs officials? Mikhail nodded once. Everything is arranged. The collection will be in your hands by midnight. Excellent. Sergei clapped his hands together. Now, I believe you promised to show me that repin you acquired? The one from the Moscow auction? Of course. This way. As the men departed again, Irina sighed dramatically. Art. Their eternal excuse for plotting, though I suppose smuggling family heirlooms back from international thieves does have a certain romance to it. I kept my expression neutral, unwilling to confirm I knew about the Fabergé eggs. I wouldn't know. Of course you wouldn't. Her smile was pitying. Tell me, does Mikhail still keep a gun under his pillow, or has he graduated to a weapon safe by the bed? Heat rushed to my face. As I said, our relationship isn't— Yes, professional. She waved a dismissive hand. A pity. You're exactly his type, you know. Dark hair, light eyes, an air of vulnerability disguising unexpected strength. She studied me with renewed interest. There's something familiar about you, actually. Have we met before? I don't think so. I'd remember. Perhaps. She didn't sound convinced. What did you say your grandmother's name was? I didn't. The question triggered a warning bell in my mind, echoing my grandmother's caution. Before Irina could press further, Mikhail and Sergei returned. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of polite conversation and strategic omissions, until finally our guests departed with promises to reconnect the following night after their business was concluded. As the door closed behind them, Mikhail's carefully maintained facade dropped. His shoulders relaxed, and he loosened his tie with a sigh of relief. You did well, he said, surprising me with the rare compliment. Irina can be challenging. She seems to know you quite intimately, I replied, unable to keep a hint of something, surely not jealousy, from my voice. Mikhail's mouth curved in amusement. Irina has constructed a fantasy version of me since she was 16. The reality would disappoint her, and what is the reality? He considered me for a long moment. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. Curiosity overrode my better judgment. I followed him through the house to a section I hadn't explored before. He pressed his palm against a panel beside an unmarked door, and it slid open to reveal a staircase leading downward. The house has a lower level? I asked, surprised. Several, actually. He gestured for me to precede him. This one is special. The staircase led to a temperature-controlled room with soft ambient lighting. As we descended, I gradually realized what I was seeing. Art, dozens of paintings, sculptures, and glass display cases filled the space, arranged like a private museum. My personal collection, Mikhail explained, watching my reaction. Not the pieces I acquire for others, like the Orlovs. These are mine alone. I moved among the displays, recognizing works that belonged in world-class museums. These can't all be legitimate purchases. Define legitimate. He followed behind me. Many were sold under duress during wartime. Others were looted by Nazis, then by Soviets, then by oligarchs during the collapse. Some disappeared from families who were later erased from history. He stopped before a small painting of a woman in profile. This belonged to my grandmother. The communists took it when they executed my grandfather for counter-revolutionary activities. I recovered it from a banker in Geneva, who didn't ask enough questions about its provenance. There was raw emotion in his voice I'd never heard before. Old pain, unhealed. Your family suffered under the Soviets? My family was destroyed by them. His jaw tightened. What the revolution didn't take, the purges did. What survived the purges, the war consumed. By the time I was born, all that remained were fragments, stories, a few photographs, names that couldn't be spoken aloud. I thought of my own fractured lineage. A Russian mother I barely remembered. A father whose identity remained a mystery. A grandmother who carried secrets like physical weights. Is that why you help people like the Orlovs recover their lost treasures? Because of what happened to your family? Partly. He moved to stand directly behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I believe certain things should be returned to where they belong. Art to its rightful owners, treasures to their families, people to their proper place. The last word sent a shiver down my spine. And what's my proper place in all this, Mikhail? He turned me to face him, one hand lifting to brush a strand of hair from my cheek. That's what I'm still determining, Alina Petrova. My heart hammered against my ribs. We stood so close that the fabric of my dress brushed against his tuxedo jacket. I should step back. I should maintain the professional distance I'd insisted upon with Irina. Instead, I remained frozen, caught in his gaze like a small animal before a predator. You still haven't answered my question, I whispered. What's the reality of who you are? A man with blood on his hands. His voice was low, his accent thickening. A man who takes what he wants and eliminates obstacles. A man who remembers every slight and repays every debt. His fingers traced the line of my jaw. But not a monster who hurts women or children. Not someone who betrays those loyal to him. I have a code, Alina. It may not align with American law, but it has kept me alive and successful in a world that devours the weak and careless. And what am I to you? An employee? A possession? A temporary diversion? His eyes darkened. You are a puzzle I'm still solving. A familiar song in an unexpected place. His gaze dropped to my lips, a temptation I've been resisting since the moment you cursed in my restaurant. Why resist? The question emerged unbidden, surprising us both. For a heartbeat, he seemed genuinely taken aback, the careful control slipping. Then his expression shifted, desire replacing surprise. Because once I take something, Alina, I don't let it go. Ever. The warning was clear, but instead of frightening me, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. I should run. I should remember Irina's words about possession and discarding. I should think of my grandmother's mysterious caution. Instead, I rose onto my toes and pressed my lips to his. For a moment, he remained perfectly still, as if giving me a final chance to retreat. Then his control shattered. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against the hard planes of his body as his mouth claimed mine with bruising intensity. There was nothing gentle in his kiss. It was pure possession, a statement of intent. I matched his fervor, weeks of suppressed attraction breaking free. My fingers tangled in his hair, destroying its perfect arrangement. His hands slid down my back, molding me closer, leaving no doubt about the effect I had on him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw something new in his eyes, a hunger that had nothing to do with power or business, and everything to do with primal need. This changes everything, he said, his voice rough. I know, I should feel regret, or at least caution. Instead, I felt only a dizzying sense of inevitability, as if all paths had always led to this moment. He took my hand, leading me back toward the stairs. Come. We have preparations to make for tomorrow's exchange, and afterward, his eyes promised things that made me shiver in anticipation. Afterward, we'll finish this conversation. As I followed him upstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line from which there was no return, and that somewhere, the threads of my unknown past and Mikhail Volkov's carefully guarded world were drawing closer together on a collision course I couldn't begin to predict. The night of the exchange arrived with a tension that vibrated through Mikhail's entire operation. The house transformed into a command center, with security personnel stationed at every entrance and a team of tech specialists monitoring cameras and communication channels from a room I hadn't known existed until today. I'd spent the morning finalizing travel arrangements for the Orlov's departure. A private jet fueled and waiting at a small airstrip north of the city. Flight plans filed under a corporate alias. Hotel reservations in New York confirmed under yet another name. The layers of misdirection were dizzying, but I was learning to navigate them with increasing confidence. The truck is 30 minutes out, reported a man I knew only as Dmitri, Mikhail's head of security. Customs checkpoint cleared, no irregularities. Mikhail nodded, his expression unreadable as he studied a digital map displaying several moving dots. We stood in his office, converted now into an operations center, with multiple screens showing different aspects of the night's carefully orchestrated plan. And our guests? He asked. En route, ETA 15 minutes. The collection? Secure in the vault, as instructed. I watched this exchange from my position by the door, dressed in black at Mikhail's insistence. Black slacks, black turtleneck, even black soft-soled shoes. You'll be invisible if necessary, he'd explained when he'd handed me the outfit that morning. The unspoken implication that invisibility might become necessary sent a chill down my spine. After our kiss in the art vault, we'd maintained a professional distance. Not from lack of desire, the electricity between us had only intensified, but from mutual recognition that the operation took priority. Business first, he'd murmured against my lips before pulling away. Always business first. Still, something fundamental had shifted. The way his eyes followed me, lingered when I moved, the casual touches that now carried undisguised intent, the private smiles that promised future pleasures once this transaction was complete. Alina. His voice pulled me from my thoughts. The file. I moved to his side, handing him the leather portfolio containing the documentation for the Orloffs. Provenance papers carefully fabricated to suggest the collection had remained in the family's possession all along, insurance details, customs declarations showing the pieces entering the country legally years earlier. His fingers brushed mine as he took the file, the brief contact sending a jolt through my system. "Stay close tonight," he said quietly. "Whatever happens." The compound's security system chimed, announcing the Orloffs' arrival. Minutes later, they entered the office, Sergei looking tense but determined, Irina trailing behind with barely concealed excitement. "Everything is proceeding as planned," Mikhail informed them, gesturing to the screens. "The shipment has cleared customs and will arrive shortly. My team will transfer the collection to secure cases, and you'll be wheels up within 2 hours." Sergei clasped Mikhail's shoulder. "After 30 years, I still can't believe we've recovered them all." "Not all," Mikhail corrected. "The lilac egg remains missing, but 7 out of 8 is a victory worth celebrating. The lilac was my mother's favorite," Irina said softly. "She used to describe it to me before bed. The gold lattice work over the purple enamel, the diamond-encrusted surprise inside. We'll find it," Mikhail assured her. "I have leads in Geneva, a former KGB officer who helped inventory the Kremlin's secret vaults before the collapse. It's only a matter of time." A sharp knock interrupted them. Dmitri opened the door without waiting for permission, his expression tense. "Sir, we have a situation." Mikhail stiffened. "What kind of situation?" "A vehicle just pulled into the Northridge access road. Government plates." "Federal?" Mikhail asked sharply. Dmitri nodded grimly. "FBI. 4 agents, led by Special Agent Blackwood." Ice flooded my veins. Blackwood, the chief of staff, the man from the Harbor Club. "Impossible," Sergei breathed. "How could they know?" "They don't." Mikhail's voice was deadly calm. "This is something else, something personal." His gaze cut to me, and I flinched at the sudden suspicion I saw there. "Get the Orlovs to the boat. Take the coastal route to the airstrip. Standard contingency protocol." Dmitri nodded, already moving to escort our guests from the room. Irina caught my eye as she passed, a mixture of pity and vindication in her expression. She'd warned me, after all. Mikhail discards what no longer serves his purpose. When the door closed, leaving us alone, Mikhail turned to me fully. "Tell me you didn't contact him." "What?" "No." The accusation stung like a physical blow. "Why would I?" "Because he recognized you from the Harbor Club. Because he's been watching you ever since, hoping you'd lead him to something he could use against me." Mikhail's eyes had gone cold, assessing me like a potential threat rather than a lover. And now, tonight of all nights, he appears at my gate with federal credentials. "I haven't spoken to him. I haven't spoken to anyone about any of this." I moved toward him, desperate to convince him. "Mikhail, you have to believe me." He studied my face for long moments, before his expression softened marginally. "I want to." He reached out, cupping my cheek in his palm. "God help me, I want to." The house security system chimed again, a different tone this time, indicating someone at the main entrance. Mikhail dropped his hand, straightening his shoulders as he visibly shifted into a different persona. Gone was the passionate man who had kissed me senseless. In his place stood Mikhail Volkov, businessman and suspected criminal, cool and untouchable. "Follow my lead," he instructed. "Say nothing unless directly questioned, and then only the truth as it pertains to your employment here. You know nothing about art, shipments, or the Orlovs. You're simply my assistant, handling my schedule and correspondence." I nodded, trying to calm my racing heart. "And Alina?" He caught my gaze. "Remember where your loyalties lie." The words felt like both a plea and a threat. We descended to the main floor together, arriving in the entryway just as Helen showed 4 visitors into the foyer. 3 were obviously federal agents, with the stiff posture and watchful eyes that screamed law enforcement. But it was Blackwood who commanded the space, his smile venomous as he spotted me beside Mikhail. "Mr. Volkov," he greeted, extending his hand. "Special Agent Jason Blackwood, FBI. Thank you for seeing us without prior notice." Mikhail shook his hand with perfect politeness. "I always cooperate with law enforcement, Agent Blackwood, though I admit, I'm surprised to see the mayor's chief of staff carrying federal credentials." "Ah, yes. An unusual arrangement." Blackwood's smile never faltered. My position with the mayor is, let's call it a temporary assignment. My primary allegiance remains with the Bureau. How convenient for everyone involved. Mikhail gestured toward the formal sitting room. Please, make yourselves comfortable. May I offer refreshments? This isn't a social call, Mr. Volkov. Blackwood followed him into the room, the other agents spreading out strategically. One remained by the entrance, another positioned himself near the windows, while the third lingered near a hallway that led deeper into the house. I assumed not, given the hour. Mikhail sat in an armchair, the positioning allowing him to observe all four men at once. I remained standing behind him, conscious of Blackwood's gaze returning to me repeatedly. What can I help you with? Blackwood settled on the sofa across from him. We're investigating a smuggling operation. Specifically, the illegal importation of cultural artifacts stolen from Russian museums during the Soviet collapse. My stomach clenched, but Mikhail didn't so much as blink. Fascinating. Art theft is a particular interest of mine, as you may know. I've lectured on the subject at the university. Yes, I'm aware of your academic contributions. Blackwood's tone made the words an accusation. I'm also aware that a shipment of particular interest is arriving in Seattle tonight, a shipment that's been carefully maneuvered through customs checkpoints, using falsified documentation and, shall we say, persuasive incentives to certain officials. That sounds like a complex operation. Mikhail's expression remained pleasant, interested but not concerned. I'm afraid I can't help you with such matters. My business interests are thoroughly documented and transparent. Are they? Blackwood removed a folded document from his jacket. This is a warrant authorizing us to search these premises for evidence related to our investigation. Specifically, documentation regarding art acquisitions, shipping manifests, and communications with known art traffickers. He set the paper on the coffee table between them. We'll try to minimize disruption, but I suggest your staff cooperate fully. Mikhail picked up the warrant, scanning it with practiced ease. I held my breath, wondering if the stolen eggs were still in the house, if the Orlovs had managed to escape through the coastal exit. If I was about to watch this man I'd foolishly fallen for be led away in handcuffs. This appears to be in order, Mikhail said finally, setting the document down. You're welcome to search the premises, though I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. My collection is properly documented and legally acquired. He gestured to Helen, who had appeared silently in the doorway. Please show Agent Blackwood and his colleagues whatever they wish to see. Blackwood's triumphant expression faltered slightly, replaced by suspicion. Mikhail's cooperation was clearly not what he'd expected. Miss Petrova will accompany us, he said suddenly, as a witness. My pulse jumped, but Mikhail merely nodded. Of course. Alina, please assist Agent Blackwood however you can. His eyes met mine briefly, conveying a silent message I couldn't quite decipher. Trust, warning, farewell. For the next 2 hours, I followed the agents through the house as they methodically examined rooms, opened cabinets, and photographed anything that caught their interest. They paid particular attention to Mikhail's office, copying files from his computer and removing physical documents for examination. Throughout it all, Blackwood kept me close, asking casual questions that were anything but casual. How long have you worked for Volkov? Just over a month. And before that? The restaurant, wasn't it? Yes. Vermilion. Quite a career change. From serving drinks to whatever it is you do here. His smile was sharp. What exactly are your duties, Miss Petrova? Administrative support, scheduling, correspondence, travel arrangements. Nothing involving his art collection? Or his shipping business? I shook my head. I don't have the expertise for that, no? With your background, I'd think you'd have unique insights. At my confused expression, he elaborated. Your mother was Katerina Petrova, yes? Before she married, she worked at the Hermitage, junior curator in the Imperial Collections Department. The revelation struck me like a physical blow. My mother had worked at the Hermitage? With imperial artifacts like the very Fabergé eggs Mikhail was smuggling for the Orlovs? Blackwood watched my reaction with predatory satisfaction. You didn't know. Interesting. There's a lot about your family you don't know, I suspect. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Volkov isn't who you think he is, Alina. And your connection to him isn't as coincidental as you've been led to believe. Before I could respond, shouting erupted from downstairs. We rushed to the main floor to find one of the agents standing triumphantly in the entryway, a small metal case in his hands. "Sir, I found this hidden in a compartment under the wine cellar floor." Blackwood took the case, opening it to reveal documents, old, yellowed papers with Cyrillic text and faded photographs. Not the eggs or jewelry I had feared, but something that caused his eyes to widen with genuine surprise. "Well, well," he murmured, scanning the contents. "The Romanov connection. It's real after all." Mikhail appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous as he saw what Blackwood held. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked truly shaken. "Those are personal family documents," he said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "They have nothing to do with your investigation." On the contrary, Blackwood held up what appeared to be a birth certificate. "They have everything to do with who you really are, Mr. Volkov. Or should I say, Your Imperial Highness." Mikhail's gaze darted to me, something like regret flickering in his eyes before his mask slammed back into place. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Blackwood." "Oh, I think I do." Blackwood turned to face me, triumph written across his features. "Miss Petrova, did you know you've been working for the last living descendant of Tsar Nicholas II? A man with a legitimate claim to the defunct Russian throne?" He laughed at my stunned expression. "Of course you didn't. Just as you don't know why he sought you out specifically. That's enough," Mikhail growled. "No, I don't think it is." Blackwood pulled another document from the case. "You see, Alina, your grandmother has been keeping secrets. Big ones, about your father." He held the paper out to me. "Would you like to know who you really are?"